Today presents Strike Battleship Argent, Book 1 in the Starships at War series by Shane Lachlan Black. Copyright 2016.
Hey, science fiction and fantasy fans, Shane Lachlan Black here, reminding you that all of my serialized fiction and all of my serialized audiobooks are available on my site, brought to you ad-free by the Action Faction. We're also supporting literacy. Every time we hit a milestone, we send another book to a school. Plus, you can get your own call sign and get producer credit in videos just like this one when you sponsor us. All ahead, battle speed.
Chapter 22. What's it going to be, Major? The edge in the as-yet unidentified intruder's voice was unmistakable. Even Yealy could tell the man was in a rush for some reason. His face looked drawn and his fingers were white around the grip of his blaster pistol. I can't speak for the entire ship, Colonel. I'm not in command. Well then, who is? At that moment, a faint greenish glow appeared all across the Colonel's body. It flickered and shifted back and forth a few times before focusing bright and sharp. It was a targeting matrix. The intruder looked down at his shoes and pants. What the? By now he was covered in a pattern of 2-inch square glowing green targeting lines. From somewhere nearby, Yealy and Moo felt and heard sympathetic vibrations in the floor and walls. The nearby observation window darkened. That's a drive field, Yealy muttered. A moment later, the unmistakable sleek lines of a 2-gen Yellow Jacket fighter rose into view outside the Skywatch Access Bay observation port. It was roughly the size of 3 racing boats parked side by side, and the sharp leading edges of its weapons emplacements made it look like an angry metal bird of prey. On its forward edge was the proud emblem of Argent Squadron 4, the Tiger Sharks. At its controls was Captain Jason Hunter. A blinding green targeting laser illuminated the shocked Colonel's face and then performed a mass and position scan of his entire body. The fighter's short-range guns rolled out of their inboard weapons bays and locked into place. The targeting grid reflected from the Colonel's jacket and clothing shifted red. Hunter's voice came over the intra-ship. I believe I have you covered, Colonel. The intruder did not speak. He looked as if he were trying to catch his breath. Major, relieve the Colonel of his weapon and take him into custody. Moo activated his comlink. All due respect, sir, he's holding a detonator. It was a bluff, Moo. He's just trying to buy himself time. His co-saboteurs have been cut off, and we've got some fascinating information about the little operation going on all the way out here at Shangri-La. Chapter 23. Zoni, Moo, Yealy, and Honora were seated in Captain Hunter's inboard cabin once again. This time they looked a little less awestruck and a little more determined to get to the bottom of whatever was happening to their ship. All 4 officers were armed with blaster pistols, and Moo was still wearing the wrist appliques from his power armor. They were engaged in a boiling discussion over what went right, what went wrong, and just who exactly they should consider their enemy. Attention on deck, Moo snapped. All 4 of the bandit jacks rose to Academy-perfect postures. As you were, Captain Hunter said quickly. He was also armed, and the look on his face told the others this meeting was at least going to start all business. Be seated. Hunter placed a tablet on the conference table. Behind him, the crystal projection screen was displaying the Argent emblem and vessel designation. The letters spelling out the ship's name were at least a foot tall. Our visitors have been pinned on deck 34 for several hours. Dr. Doverly has assured me they will not be permanently harmed by the introduction of a narcotic compound through the life support systems. Lieutenant Simpkins has been instructed to give them another 30 minutes. What are they holding out for, sir? Moo asked, genuinely interested in why a dozen men would barricade themselves on someone else's ship and still expect to prevail. That falls into our other subject of discussion. Apparently there's a little more going on out here than an overdue ship. A lot more, Honora added. Colonel Atwell hasn't been very helpful yet. Although his stories about dead man switches and tons of explosives were certainly entertaining, they didn't give us much in the way of clues regarding his involvement. Yealy was drawing little imaginary circles on the table. Her posture made her look like a teenage girl, listening to her parents lecture her about getting a job. We should have listened to the doctor, sir. Hunter stopped and considered his lieutenant's words. Go ahead, engineer. I called this meeting for opinions. We knew sabotage was a clear threat. We didn't do enough to prepare. It cost me 2 men, and it just about cost us the ship." "It wasn't your fault, Yili," Honora said gently. "I'm not trying to assign or avoid blame here, ma'am. I'm just pointing out we all got caught flat-footed. I don't know the ship's systems well enough. That cost us critical time that put more people in danger." "They were one step ahead of us the entire time," Mu said. "Even the Colonel and his stories about poison gas and the fake light show in Skywatch got me to at least think about striking a deal to save whatever was left." "It was my fault," Zoni said. "We froze down communications too soon. By the time we realized the whole thing was going sideways, it was too late to restore our emergency channels, and then the bridge got cut off and Hunter held up his hand. Zoni quieted down and shrank back into her seat. "If there's any blame to be laid here, it's mine and mine alone. I'm the captain of this ship. I'm responsible for the lives of every man and woman aboard, and I'm responsible for the safety and survival of this vessel. Yili?" The engineer looked up, recognizing that peculiar tone Jason Hunter was capable of that told her he was about to say something heartfelt and important. "We lost 2 men in engineering, but you saved almost 1,000 lives by your quick thinking. The best way we can honor the memory of those 2 men is to avoid making the same mistake twice." Yili nodded. "And to go pay our friends a little visit," Mu added. "I've got a couple of ideas in that department, Colonel," Hunter replied. Mu looked up with a shocked expression. The captain tossed him a metal box. He almost fumbled it before catching it with both hands. "Orders came through right after we hit the Gitairn jump gate. Skywatch Command moved you up after I requested you for Argent. Congratulations." I don't know what to say, sir." "Tell me what you think about promoting our chief engineer soon," Hunter said. "I think something should be done to recognize her. Shall we say, innovative approach to command?" Hunter grinned, and Yili smiled a little despite herself. "What action's been taken?" the captain asked, reclining in his tall leather chair. "I've ordered the CSW to maintain full combat space patrols until further ordered. Wildcat squadrons are rotating 3 by 1 to a range of 10 megaclicks," Doverly reported. "I have a Paladin strike force on a 10-minute alert off rails 12 and 13 and a T-Hawk strike force standing by off rails 1 and 2. Senior Chief Buckmaster has assured me Zoni's plan codenamed Jackrabbit isn't just something to add to the dinner menu." "Tell me about that, Lieutenant." "Well, sir, it's part of a thing me and my friend Louie were working on at CATS right before I got my civvy assignment. We had this old Gen 1 Jack hull parked in storage. Lewis was spending all his spare time tinkering with the jump engines and the drive field generators, and that left me standing there with nothing to do except listen to his stories about horse racing." "Oh, for the love of Mike, not those stories," Yili said. "Yeah, those stories." Zoni rolled her eyes. "Anyway, just for fun, I took apart the subspace transmitters and the radio amps, and since the hull didn't have any weapons, I plugged them into the empty bays and I noticed something." "I think I know where you're going with this, Zoni," Hunter said with a twinkle in his eye. "Go on." "Well, sir, you know how the old Bearcats used to have those enormous shielded magnets bolted to the undercarriage of the wiring harness? They dumped that whole assembly when the Wildcats replaced it with the carbon lattice circuitry, didn't they? Honora asked. Exactly, Hunter said. Yeah, and that left this big hole because the Wildcat hull is just a Bearcat hull without the external capsule reactor mounts. So I took a broken EW package from the spare parts depot, mounted a really crappy Battlecomp component on it, and wired it up with those amps and ran some frequency tests on it, and I think I invented a new ship. So it's a fighter with all radios and no weapons? Mu asked. It would be if it weren't for the 2-gen data link, Zoni said, almost bouncing in her chair and trying to contain her excitement. Normally, if you just fly the thing out there, it's a Nemesis without the really advanced gear. But a Nemesis can't lash up with a Yellow Jacket data link because it would give away their position, Yeely said nonchalantly, still drawing little imaginary designs on the table with her finger. Right, Zoni exclaimed. So what happens when you put this ship of yours in a squadron data net? Honora asked. You get a whole squadron of nasty little flying point defense emplacements with exactly the same fire control circuitry as an anti-missile frigate, the signals officer replied proudly, right down to the model numbers on the components. Interesting, Mu exhaled. Are you suggesting we convert a battle squadron of fighters to missile defense? Hunter asked, bringing the conversation back down to earth. No, sir, you don't have to do anything that drastic, Zoni replied. All you have to do is add the radio ship to the formation and let them pick their own targets. They don't have to stop being fighters. They get advanced missile defense capability without losing a thing. And that means we could put 3 anti-missile frigates on our perimeter as part of our combat space patrol, Honora said. Not exactly a battle group, but impressively close. What do we call this thing again? Hunter asked. A jackrabbit, sir, Zoni announced, clearly just as excited about the name as she was about the invention itself. All right, have Buckmaster modify 1 Yellow Jacket for each squadron with your circuitry. Zoni beamed. Where does that leave us on OOB, Commander? We can put 54 Wildcats and 23 Yellow Jackets in space at your command. If we raid parts storage, Buckmaster assures me he can field 19 T-Hawks with full weapons loadouts. Outstanding. What about ground forces, Colonel? 2nd Airborne has 21 Paladins on ready alert. 7th Air Ground Task Force has 18 heavy Paladins. I can have a mechanized battalion planetside in 12 minutes. Sounds awfully violent to me, Colonel, Hunter said with a smirk. If we can't eat it or kiss it, we'll kill it, sir. Commander? Damage control has restored all operations on Deck 11. Hull breaches have been secured, Honora replied. Argent search and rescue is fully operational. What did you come up with? Whoever did the final equipment checks before Argent launched forgot to tell me about the Corvette situation. We've all been so busy talking about fighters, T-Hawks, and Paladins, nobody bothered to check up on our support craft. We were in kind of a hurry, Zoni said with a grin. I know we've got launch facilities set aside for at least 4 vessels, Mu said. We have 5 as it turns out. We've got Tranquility 3, which is a specialized medical corvette. There are 3 evac rescue lifters, and get this, a brand new Nightwing SR patrol flyer. I think we stole the medical boat. Someone painted over her designation. That or we stole the Nightwing too, Hunter quipped. Never heard of those ships, Doctor. What have they got? Zoni asked. Well, it's pretty much a Nemesis built around a hospital trauma unit, Honora replied. Nice and agile with lots of remote probes, a couple of heavy lookbots, and 4 Angel recovery craft. I saw one of those Angels in action at the last flight demo at CATS before I left, Zoni said. Incredible what they can do. Autonomous search and recovery, Doverly said. Like your mother's arms. One of those things could fish you out of a suitcase buried under a mountain at the bottom of the ocean and fly you home with a little umbrella drink in your hand. They're like St. Bernards with anti-grav. Ha, Zoni said brightly. Mu chuckled. Very good. All right, Jax, listen up because we're not looking for missing admirals anymore, Hunter said. Everyone quieted down. Hughes is off the reservation, and speaking only for myself, I can understand his concerns. Atwell's story checks out, at least for now. I ordered launch of a long-range probe into Gitairn Sector 9 right after we secured the bridge, and I got the results right before this meeting. It picked up gravitic reactions from at least 16 vessels on the opposite side of the Reach. 5 were heavies. Sounds like a war looking for a place to start, Mu said. That's a task force 1 4-hour jump from 3 populated systems, boys and girls. and the only Skywatch vessel standing between them has a name that starts with A. That's the situation, plain and simple. Any word from command? Honora asked. I've formulated and rejected at least 3 different strategies for calling home, all of which end with what I'm sure will be us ordered back to base. Then there's the Barker's asteroid situation. There's more? Zoni asked, eyes wide. Oh, it gets better and better, Hunter replied. The Admiral and his gang of cowboys dropped a Sentinel emplacement on the asteroid field side of that deserted rock. That, combined with the Colonel's now confirmed minefield, gives the former crew of the Dunkerque a way to present the enemy formation with a Hobson's choice. Brave the minefield or get carved up like a roasted turkey by long-range proximity bursts from that gun. We ran the transponders from his monitoring stations, Honora added. Those mines are the big boys. He's got anti-missile, anti-stealth, anti-ship, X-ray, antimatter, and cluster packs. Every one of them is equipped with a maneuvering ring, and at least half the field is cloaked. It would take a squadron of minesweepers a month to fly the length of a football field in that salvage yard. And Barker's asteroid is parked right in the center of it. There's no way to get at the Sentinel without flying through at least half those mines. Now we could probably clear it with railcasters, but if we open up, we'll draw the attention of both the Sentinel and the enemy task force, so I've got a plan. I figured you might, Zoni said with a grin. The display behind Hunter switched to a view of the Rho Theta system. In the center of the display was a formation of 9 Skywatch warships, with DSS Fury at their center. It just so happens I've got my own task force, Hunter announced proudly. Perseus, huh? Mu said. That's Jace Hunter's outfit, isn't it? The same. Hunter switched the large display back to Gitairn 8 with Argent at the center and the asteroid field at the upper edge. With all due respect, sir, isn't this just the Hunter family doing what we're about to blame the Admiral for? Yeely asked without looking up. It would be if I had plans to attack. My orders are to get out of this system with the crew of the Dunkerque safe. If that means I have to take the Admiral into custody, then so be it. If I'm about to do Jutland in space, I don't have the tonnage with Argent solo. But if my darling sister joins my command, we become Strike Fleet Perseus and punch in a much higher weight class. Argent and Fury with the Perseus battle group can sure bring the lumber, sir. No doubt about that, Mu said. I'd be happier with more muscle and less finesse, but with our data link and advanced battlespace controls, we can at least make it a running fight back to Core's Edge if it comes to that. Commander Hunter reports Fury and her battle group will rendezvous with Argent in 6 hours. Well, it looks like we've planned ahead this time, Honora said. Sir, what is that system upper left on the display? Zoni asked. It looks like Tactical isn't quite sure how far it is from the enemy contacts. Hunter swiveled in his chair and scanned the screen. Up there? The lieutenant got out of her chair. Honora and the others watched. This up here, she said, pointing at a small planet on the outer edge of the Gitairn Companion Stars system. Isn't this one of the Relio system's planets? Looks like it, but those planets are just volcano-covered wastelands. The Relio system is brand new in cosmic terms. I recall Astrometrics thinks it might have been formed from the remains of the Gitairn Nebula. Too young for much, Doverly replied. What's on your mind, Lieutenant? Hunter asked, his intuitive antenna buzzing. Well, sir, I just noticed how the minefield, the gun, and the enemy ships are all set up right between the core and the Relio primary. I mean, the Colonel's story about the big bad enemy fleet coming to kill everybody sounds appropriately scary and all, but if that gun were pointed in our direction and trying to stop us from getting to the Relio system, it would be a textbook interdiction strategy. Mu said. Don't have to remind anyone here we've got no reason to trust the Colonel, Yeely said. Leaving aside for the moment he put a gun to my head, his story about rigging the ship to blow up turned out to be a hoax. Something dark and ominous tugged at Hunter's insides. Both versions of events sounded perfectly reasonable, but so far he had been hit with impossible-to-believe revelations about a Skywatch flag officer's involvement in unsanctioned operations, and now the only evidence he had things were, as they seemed, was the word of a man who had already been demonstrated to be a liar at least once. Then there was the fact Argent had been sabotaged and fired on. Hunter made the decision and keyed his comlink. Hunter to bridge. Bridge, Walls. Ensign, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Patch me to the pilot station nice and easy. Don't panic and don't make it look like you're doing anything unusual. Stay on the channel and tie in CIC and Skywatch. Aye, sir, Walls replied with an impressively calm tone. You're on. Hunter to pilot, acknowledge, the captain said quietly. Helm, Lieutenant McInerney. Status report? Argent at station keeping per your orders, sir. No navigational hazards reported. CSP maintaining standard perimeter. We are space clear for all flight modes. Very well, Lieutenant. Maneuvering thrusters only. Back us off from Barker's asteroid nice and slow. 5 meters per second SNS, shields nominal. Aye, sir. Helm answering. All engines back 1%. Aft velocity now 5 MPS, course 180 Mark 0, heading 180 relative. Sir, Zoni asked. Hunter held up a hand as if waiting for something. The lieutenant noticed he was gripping the arm of his chair a little harder than normal. CIC to bridge, something or someone just went active inside the Gitairn space field, Sector 10. Hunter to Nemesis 8, analysis, quickly. Compiling, sir. Battlecomp is inconclusive. Navicomp thinks it's some kind of ILS beacon. Do we have traffic out there? Negative, Nemesis. ILS beacon? We're not active, are we? Yeely asked with an edge of urgency in her voice. Negative. Aside from the ECM, we've had no active sensors or scanners since we got here, Honora replied. Then they're piggybacking a targeting sweep in an ILS harmonic. Nemesis 8, give me a position for that contact. Bearing 021, Mark 28, range 0.4 megaclicks and stationary. Plot it! Hunter switched the display to pick up the Nemesis tracking telemetry. A red dot glowed to life near the asteroid field, only 1 light minute from Barker's asteroid. Battlecomp just lit up, sir. Argent is being targeted for range. The Nemesis signals officer shouted, and the audio signal spiked, distorting his voice. Permission to jam the channel. Blast it! Walls, full power astern. A painfully bright weapons impact overturned the conference table and all the chairs at once just before the lights flickered, then went dark. Chapter 24. Ensign Walls cursed through gritted teeth. He meant to secure himself at the con, but he was doing his best to help the other crew members maintain contact with the elusive sensor readings at the edge of Gitairn Sector 10. The weapons impact threw him at least 12 feet. He landed flat with a painful grunt and all the air was driven from his lungs. The officer of the watch reached way down and somehow found the strength to keep from passing out. His hearing cleared gradually, and the reddish glow of the battle alert had replaced the soothing lights of the spacious Argent bridge with a storm of sound and urgency. He climbed to his feet with the help of the center chair. Emergency power to forward battle screens. Stand by your main batteries. At his command, power surged from the battleship's sprawling reactor assembly like adrenaline through a leviathan's heartbeat. The forward screens magnified their power output. The glow obscured the unrepaired damage from the previous missile attack. Helm, reverse your turn. Course 165, Mark 10. Tactical, energize starboard armor. Energize railcasters 3 and 4. Stand by for a firing solution. A girl barely old enough to legally sign her own name piped up from the tactical console. Enemy contact Kilo X-ray 2, now tracking starboard, bearing 335, range 0.4. CIC and Battlecomp report a bearings match and waveform lock. Walls turned to the forward display with a feral glare. Snapshot casters 1 and 2. Echelon second battery and overlay main power cycle for a full barrage. Argent continued her reversing maneuver. Her main batteries came to life and turned gradually to engage the enemy starship like the heads of gargantuan mythical serpents. The searing fury that followed would have bleached the Gitairn star had it still existed. 40-foot-wide lances of incredible disruptive energy exploded into the distance. Just over a second later, both speared the darkness just aft of another enemy cruiser, on for range but wide right. The enemy ship immediately returned fire. The Argent bridge heaved with the force of multi-megaton explosions against her forward battle screens. Space beyond the vessel's leading edge burned with uncontainable white-hot energy for a few moments. Then all that was visible were after images of the secondary disruptions. Snapshot 3. Another angry beam flashed through space. Another clean miss. This time on for deflection but high. The shot burned just over the cruiser's bridge. The smaller vessel began to veer off and fired again, this time with all 4 of its considerably smaller energy batteries. Again Argent bucked. Impact patterns rolled across her nose and began to bleed across to her starboard edge. The bridge crew held tightly to their shock harnesses as they were blasted back and then thrown forward by the inertial compensators. Magnification lock. Waveform now 15% over amplitude. Overlay auxiliary power cycle and stand by to echelon casters 5 and 6. Report reloads on casters 1 and 2. Walls was barely in his chair. His posture suggested a man about to start a foot race from a seated position. Casters 1 and 2 charging, ready to fire in 12 seconds. Snapshot 4. Argent's Railcaster 4 glowed menacingly. The energy increased until the light from inside its 200-foot magnetically energized chamber grew to blazing intensity in less than a second. Another colossal beam of disruptive energy sliced into the distance and slammed into the port-side engine section of the enemy cruiser. The smaller ship's shields screamed against the power overloads, flickered weakly, and then collapsed. The vessel drifted to starboard and began to yaw into her turn. Got him, sir. Direct hit aft. Battlecomp reports enemy vessel's port-side shields have collapsed. Walls crushed an imaginary object in his fist and rose from the center chair. Hold that range and deflection. Snapshot 5. Argent's fifth shot pulverized the cruiser's armor amidships. Secondary explosions shook the vessel's interior, and flashes of fire became visible through the seams being blown in her hull. She doggedly returned fire. This time, 2 of her beams skipped high, while the other 2 crashed into Argent's starboard battle screen. Arcing electrical energy snaked across the mighty ship's defenses, but once again the screens held. There was a glimpse of victory. Then a bone-chilling flash obscured Barker's asteroid momentarily. Argent's bridge crew had only seconds for realization to dawn, the time it took for the hammer of the gods to traverse just over 1,000,000 miles and slam into Argent's forward screens. It was as if the entire ship had been thrown against the ground. One moment, Ensign Walls was preparing for the first mission kill of his career, and the next he was yanked off his feet and launched across Argent's bridge. Someone was shouting into a comlink. "Emergency medical team to the bridge. Watch officer has been injured." Suddenly, all of the intra-ship channels had come to life. Voices began overlapping and shouting, trying to be heard. The bridge crew hesitated, unsure what to do in the absence of a commanding voice. The girl at tactical shouted over the din, "Lieutenant, Ensign Walls is hurt. You have to take command." "Negative. Get on the MC and raise the captain or the XO." McInerney fought her controls, trying to keep the gigantic ship on her bearings. "Lieutenant." McInerney whirled, her eyes afire. "As you were, petty officer. It's against regulations for a pilot to assume command even in an emergency. Now follow my order. Get on the MC and get a command officer up here now." The girl at tactical looked frightened, but she followed the pilot's order. "Captain or XO to the bridge. Captain or XO to the bridge. Emergency. Her voice trailed off, as if she weren't quite sure what to say next. 2 other bridge crew members had unhooked their shock harnesses and went to Ensign Walls' side. He was still unconscious. His face was bruised, and at least one large gash was visible down the side of his face. Another impact from the cruiser's guns shook the bridge, knocking the 2 unsecured crew members against the backs of their chairs. A voice came over the engineering channel. "We're losing the starboard generators. Something's got to be done about that ship out there, or we're going to be down and vulnerable on our right edge." Commander Honora Doverly rushed through the Deck 1 access hatch right behind the emergency medical team. The group of medics went to Walls while Doverly took the center chair. "Report. We have 2 enemy targets, ma'am. Kilo X-Ray 2 is on the board and bearing 341 at a range of 0.5. We've also been engaged by a ground emplacement on Barker's asteroid. CIC can't provide us with any targeting information on the big gun." "Got to hand it to Walls," Honora said. "He would have made a fine pirate if he were given enough cannon. Doverly to Skywatch, patch me through to CSW." "Affirmative, Commander. You're on." "Hatch?" "Standing by, ma'am." "Report status of Alert Space Patrol Gitairn 10. Archangel 0 on station and awaiting orders, ma'am." "Synchronize CIC and patch confirm orders from Force Commander. Vector 341 and engage Kilo X-Ray 2. Your signal is Tango. Alpha 0 is weapons free. Sync the target." Hatch almost snarled his reply. "Yes, ma'am." Somewhere between Argent and the enemy cruiser, the 22 Wildcat fighters of Archangel Squadron banked in a perfect triple gyro diamond formation, energized their drive fields and accelerated to 300 kilometers per s. The calm voice of Flight Leader Lieutenant Zach Full Keg Roscoe sounded in their headsets. "Avenger Wings, this is Archangel 0. Close and overload anti-proton energy guns and stand by to engage in flight order. Affirmative, Alpha Zero. Archangel Squadron expanded its formation into tight groups of 4 fighters each, with each diamond set rotating their positions on the vertical axis as they maneuvered into firing lanes. The 2 lead fighters flipped on their spotting transmitters. Engage SSS and accelerate to attack speed. 22 lethal fighters rocketed forward, approaching speeds of nearly 400 kilometers a second. All pilots engaged their full-spectrum combat telemetry systems and activated their sight sound environments. Immediately, every fighter's onboard computers added sound, temperature, air pressure, tactile and olfactory stimuli to the battle space, or at least that's what the pilots thought. Their tac suits were responsible for the sensory inputs and the subtle changes in the air filtration. The pilots' brains interpreted all the new information as if they were riding Harley-Davidson motorcycles across Omaha Beach during Operation Overlord. The sight sound system gave Wildcat and Yellowjacket pilots dramatically increased capabilities in space combat, as it allowed their minds to gather information on the battle space on multiple levels simultaneously, instead of trying to synthesize only visual information from their instruments and occasional spoken instructions from their flight leader. Explosions were heard and felt. Fires had scent and heat. The approach of enemy vessels and missiles were often heard before they were seen. Space was given an atmosphere and the roar of wind. There was even taste added to some of the scents. Pilots utilizing what came to be known as SSS during initial combat performance tests swept instruments-only squadrons from space with almost comedic consistency. The analysis of their performance was crystal clear. Human beings, provided with the ability to fully utilize their reflexes, intuition, and subconscious thought processes, performed at a much higher level than those forced to interpret machine readouts. They utilized energy better, had better physiological reactions, and put far less stress on their ship's environmental and emergency life support systems. Ultimately, it came down to numbers. Pound for pound, a SSS-equipped fighter was as effective in engagements as 3 equivalent fighters not so equipped. No technology in fleet history had been rushed onto the battlefield faster. 12 seconds later, the Archangels came screaming through the enemy cruiser's defensive perimeter on wildly divergent attack vectors. A pitched howl came over the BattleNet as Roscoe's lead Wildcat strafed the cruiser's communications arrays. The little ship's AP guns frantically poured anti-proton destruction across the larger ship's hull. A line of explosions followed by secondaries ripped and thundered, throwing debris and ablative hull plating in all directions as Alpha Zero peeled away. When the rest of the squadron opened fire, the results were not unlike 24 angry mongooses savaging a disoriented hog. Weapons fire from the relatively tiny craft flashed and strobed from every direction. The cruiser's point defense returned fire as best it could, but Wildcat fighters were notoriously difficult to track at such close ranges. Orange impact bursts, debris and blasts of venting atmosphere appeared in locations all over the cruiser's hull. Moments later, Commander Honora Doverly, executive officer of the battleship DSS Argent, unleashed the full power of the fleet's precision-synchronized battle data network. With the enemy cruiser now engaged with the growling and swirling furball of angry little fighters, it left their mothership free to resume the iron-heavy body blows. Reconfirm range to target and re-establish waveform lock on previous bearings. Affirmative, Kilo X-ray 2 bearings match, waveform lock confirmed, the petty officer at Tactical replied. Her voice sounded far more confident now that there was someone in charge. Snapshot 6. Railcaster 6 glowed to life and then unleashed another immense bolt of destructive power across the dark expanse of space. The datanet made sure fire control was timed to tolerances of 1,000th of a second in order to avoid hitting any of Archangel Squadron's fighters. The shot detonated against the enemy cruiser's portside hull just aft of her bridge. It was the space combat equivalent of hitting an unprotected opponent's neck with a wide swing of a headsman's axe. The explosion shook the damaged vessel like a crash dummy being ejected through a windshield. Skywatch, this is Force Command. Message to Commander. Paladin Strike Force on Flight 3. Launch all spacecraft. I say again, launch all spacecraft. Vector Rally Point Gold and stand by for target instructions. Yes, ma'am, Highlanders are in the air. Very well, monitor Archangel 0 and report status at first opportunity. Signals, get me Nemesis 8 on scrambled frequency. The rest of the bridge crew exhaled in awe as they watched the Argent First Officer do her deadly work. She had already launched enough firepower to level a small city in a matter of minutes, and everyone aboard knew there were yet more squadrons buzzing on Argent's other 2 flight decks, just waiting for the young doctor's nod. Watching a refined young woman sipping tea between opening the cages of rabid, hunger-crazed wolves to chase fleeing robbers would have been less unusual looking. I have Nemesis 8 on scrambled channel J9. Very well. Nemesis, can you give me an estimate on the cycle time for the Sentinel? Doverly asked. It all depends on their power systems, ma'am. We're not reading any reactor signatures from anywhere inside that asteroid field. If they're running on batteries or planet-side portables, that may have been their only shot for a while. Understood. Any change in readings, you raise me directly on my headset, clear? Acknowledged, Force Commander. Bridge to engineering. Get me a damage report as soon as possible. Report readiness to tactical station. Honora keyed her mic silent. What is the ensign's condition? He's stabilized, ma'am. Request permission to evacuate him to sickbay. Granted. I'll be down in a few minutes. I suspect our medical staff has their hands full with a most difficult patient right now. Get Lieutenant Austin from Astrometrics up here on the double. I need someone to mind the store for a few minutes. Chapter 25. I'm walking out that door. Sir, I have orders to... I know all about your orders. My ship is under attack. Now you either get someone in here with my clothes, or so help me, I will walk onto the bridge and assume command of this ship wearing nothing but a surgical glove. The enlisted medical staff peered out from laboratory storage. To them, a captain might as well have been an emperor wearing golden armor and riding a dragon through the halls. They were used to reporting to buck petty officers and the occasional ensign. Having him roaring and spitting fire in their trauma unit was most unsettling, especially when he started barking threats to have them all busted down to mud rollers and assigned to the bowling alley. Colonel Moody managed to twist himself far enough to one side to see what was going on. It was a painful move, but the voice of reason had to be heard. Hey, Cap, I don't think the doc was kidding when she said... Hunter threw himself back against his pillows. Whose brilliant idea was it to give the XO and Chief Medical Officer jobs to the same person? Yours, Dr. Doverly said as she strode into sickbay. Are you still huffing and puffing? Don't you start with that huffing and puffing thing again. You get me crutches, a bed with wheels, or 3 sturdy crewmen, and get me back on the bridge of this ship, or by all that is good and right in this world, I'll... Acknowledged, Skipper, I'm sorry, but you've been overruled, Commander Doverly replied, checking the captain's charts. By whom and under what authority? Hunter roared. By the Chief Medical Officer of DSS Argent, she replied calmly. And that gives her the authority, Mu said, wincing as the metabolic stimulators on his broken wrist lowered the temperature around his hand in preparation for another treatment. Doverly took out a portable medical scanner and re-examined the contusion on the side of the captain's head. You've had a concussion, Jason. That and you've got a broken ankle and 2 broken fingers. I can mend the easy stuff, but if that concussion isn't evaluated properly, it could be very dangerous for both you and the ship. Austin to XO. Doverly keyed her headset mic. Go ahead, Lieutenant. I have assumed command on the bridge as acting officer of the watch. Target Kilo X-Ray 1 is burning in space. Very well. Signal Archangel 0 to return to CSP pattern and stand by for further orders. Doverly out. You and your combat space patrol, Hunter sighed. Honora smiled. A moment later, the emergency medical team brought Ensign Walls into the trauma unit and placed him in one of the life sustainer units. Is Walls going to be all right? Hunter asked. Doverly looked over at the ensign's LS unit and verified he had been secured properly. I think so. He's got a lot of injuries from the last attack. I think he got a little overzealous stalking around the bridge during his moment as Admiral Nelson directing his gunnery. I have to say, he scored some points. He just has to remember to fasten his seatbelt before he starts flying teeth first into enemy weapons fire. What happened to him? Mu asked. Then he groaned as the stasis units nearly froze both of his feet. Same thing that happened to us, Doverly replied. He tried to knock Argent over and the ship won. Am I going to be like this for long, Honora? Zoni whined. She stood in the doorway to the trauma unit with her arm in a sling and a bandage around her head. I can't run transmitters properly pecking around with one finger. Well, don't you look like a forlorn little orphan? Doverly exclaimed. Zoni stuck her lower lip out. No reason to be sad, Lieutenant. You'll be good as new in a couple of days. Where is Yeely? Wasn't she with you? She grabbed an oxygen injector and a stim scanner and said she was going back to engineering, said she was worried they would mess up damage control on the energy systems after all the rerouting she did. I'm telling you, trying to keep all of you under control and properly treated is like trying to corral 2 litters of 6-week-old puppies, Honora exclaimed. Zoni, you need to be off your feet for the next 6 hours. I have to get back to the bridge, Doctor. Austin can't run the whole ship by himself. Bed 5. Now. That's an order, Lieutenant. Doverly's voice had that combination of motherly certainty and command tone that told the Argent signals officer she wasn't kidding. Zoni sighed. Fine. She slouched over to the LS unit and plopped herself down, staring at the ceiling with a pouting look on her face. How are you doing, Colonel? Don't ask, he replied. These machines you've got me hooked up to make me feel like I'm living in a delicatessen refrigerator. Well, at least you won't be wandering off. The doctor met the captain's gaze. Another word out of you and I'll pump you so full of sedatives you'll forget your name. Hunter made a face, then collapsed on his pillows again. Janice, you can tell the orderlies to stop hiding in the lab now, Doverly said to one of the nurses still working on Ensign Wall's LS unit. I have to go find our engineer before she falls and breaks something else. She handed her blaster to the nurse. Set this on stun. If any of these delinquents tries to leave sickbay, shoot them. Chapter 26. There's no way this many things can go this wrong this quickly, Commander Jace Hunter grumbled. She strode quickly through the nearly empty corridors of Survey Station 19, located at the extreme western edge of the Gitairn asteroid field. Her battle group was only a few hours out from its rendezvous with her brother's battleship, but the readings from one of her group's frigates left her with no option but to stop and confirm the data. With her was her XO, Lieutenant Commander Tom Huggins, and several lower-ranking signals analysis officers representing some of her escort ships. We've never seen cloak warnings like this. It's almost like they're using some kind of technology we haven't seen yet. We're still getting gravitics from the main body reported by our probes, but if the Ajax is right... Tom, if the Ajax is right, we're about to jump into the biggest open space battle since the Praetorian campaign. Amy, did you correlate the readings with signals and astrometrics? Yes, ma'am, Lieutenant Sutherland replied. I have all the readings in this portable unit. I need about 15 minutes with the station's tracking logs to confirm. If we're right, we can track the last known positions of the unusual readings and be ready when the cloaked formation makes its move. Outstanding, Jace replied as her team rounded the corner. 2 Marines were guarding the door to the astrometrics record storage. Open the door, Corporal, she said impatiently. I'm sorry, ma'am. Access to record storage must be authorized by the station commander. Commander Huggins interrupted. We already checked. The best we could come up with was the approach officer. Apparently there's nobody in charge out here except a couple of accountants and a guy with a flashlight. Corporal? Hunter's expression made it clear she wasn't in much of a mood for litigation. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I have my orders. Corporal, can you identify my rank insignia? The Fury skipper borrowed Lieutenant Sutherland's tablet device and started looking up the emergency regulations. Yes, ma'am. And what rank is that, Marine? You wear the insignia of a Skywatch commander, ma'am. And the opposite device. The corporal hesitated. Tom gave him 2 extra moments and then cut in. That's the badge of a task force commander, Corporal. The Marine swallowed, trying to emphasize his regulation-perfect attention posture. Somewhere in his adrenaline-hazy memory, he recalled the qualifications for that particularly rare designation. The star-spangled gold insignia would be hard to find on a command officer 2 ranks higher. Nevertheless, here she was. Judging by the numerous tightly packed pips, there were at least 9 ships, including 2 ships of the line under her flag. The difference in firepower between a Marine sentry armed with a blaster rifle and this slender young woman was roughly the difference between an underfed earthworm and an angry Bengal tiger. How many rank insignia is that, Marine? Hunter asked, still scrolling through the regulations on her tablet. 3, ma'am. Hunter stepped forward until she was nose to chin with the taller Marine. That's right. That means I'm so close to being a captain I can smell that 4th insignia. Now you either open that lab and let my people in there, or I'll snap you back so hard your hair will change color. Do you read me, Marine? Her voice had that tone particular to officers with experience leading thousands of men and women in battle. The Sentry Marine correctly recognized his authority, whatever its justification, was not going to successfully compare. He could only imagine the cosmic levels of hell someone roughly 600 ranks higher could rain down on his life. The images of 10-foot-tall admirals and courts-martial crawled out of his blackest fears before he finally decided to favor discretion over valor. It was one thing to bravely charge the enemy. It was another to choose to die on a hill targeted by an entire artillery division with nothing but a time card punched by a junior lieutenant for protection. Jace watched impatiently as her signals specialists unpacked their gear in the records lab. Commander Huggins stood nearby. "Last thing I need today is a lengthy debate with some rifle-lugging grunt over who is allowed where," Hunter muttered. "After this is over, I'll tow this entire station back to Core 10 and drop it in a box. When we find out who abandoned their post out here, I think you'll have a hide to go with that tow job," Huggins replied. "Hunter to Fury, report all contacts." "Fury, Mallory, and CIC, ma'am. No contacts except King 1. Bearings unchanged." "Very well. We're in the records lab. We should have some answers shortly. Stand by." "Affirmative, Skipper. Standing by." Hunter to Echo. "Hi, Jace. Isn't this station the coolest?" Tom smiled. Commander Hunter's self-built team of miniature robots all had the personalities of children between the ages of about 4 and 7. Despite the fact none of them were larger than a gallon bottle of milk, as a group they were a surprisingly effective outfit, capable of acting on their own up to a point. Echo was their combination early warning alarm and medical unit. "Yeah, it's pretty neat. Are Rebel and Butterfly with you?" "Uh-huh. Do you want to talk to them?" "Not right now. Keep me advised. If you get any weird readings, you make sure to tell Rebel and Butterfly first and then tell me, okay?" "Okay, Jace. See ya." Sutherland and the other officers were well into their work by now. "Do you always bring your robots with you on landing missions, ma'am?" Amy asked. "She certainly does, Lieutenant." Tom was examining a large map of Gitairn space behind the records consoles. "I'll never get over fleet officers who ask why you travel with a group of remote-controlled toy cars and aircraft," he said. "Always a source of entertainment when we drop in at Scary's." "I've been dealing with raised eyebrows since cybernetics school," Hunter replied. "High-ranking officers have a bad habit of not checking the records before they start barking at us." "I learned my lesson in a hurry," Tom said. "After I found out both Rebel and Wave had been nominated for Valor Awards, and that Echo has an Indian Forks campaign ribbon, I've been earning a fortune making odds on the next admiral to step in it." "Ma'am?" The Task Force Perseus officers gathered around Sutherland's console. She had called up the historical records gathered by the many sensors and scanners Station 19 had been operating continuously for many weeks. "There," Tom said, pointing at a spike in the electromagnetic signatures at system's edge. "Those are the same readings we got from Ajax." "And right here are the readings that confirm it," Jace added. "Those anomalous datasets are following a lateral line. Station 19 has been tracking them for over a month. There aren't 16 ships out there. There's more like 40 ships, and some of those power plants are our designs." "Why would Skywatch ships be cloaked on the far edge of Gitairn? We don't have any bases or space lanes this far out," Tom said. "If I didn't know better, I'd say that's a—" Hunter keyed her comlink. "Fury, this is Hunter. Bring fleet up on the Z-Pack and patch it to my personal designator." "Affirmative, Commander, you're on." "Hunter to fleet. Set emergency condition 3. Standby battle stations." As the acknowledgements poured in, Hunter switched channels. "Mallory, replot our course to rendezvous with Argent and prepare for departure." "What's on your mind, Skipper?" "That's an interdiction formation, and they're not prepping a defense. That fleet is massing for an attack on someone or something, and I'm betting it's populated core worlds. Skywatch would have to muster our entire strength on this side of Boomtown to match that kind of firepower." "How could they keep this off everyone's radar this long?" Tom asked. "Unknown, but I can guarantee you we're going to pull the really loud fire alarm in the hall in about 20 minutes. Chapter 27. Echo rolled about in the station cafeteria and then down the long corridor. All her short-range scanners and sensors were on maximum gain, looking for anything unusual on the virtually abandoned station. There was a brief moment of excitement when she came across a maintenance crew member doing inventory on cleaning supplies, but he was wearing a proper fleet ID badge, so she said hello and moved on. The little vehicle's onboard sensor suite had an audio component which continued beeping softly as she traveled from place to place. If those watching didn't know better, they would think she was a toy ambulance or truck of some kind. until they heard the beeping and the sing-songy humming. She sounded like a girl of about 5 dressing up her stuffed animals for a pretend tea party. What made Echo particularly dangerous to potential enemies was the fact she was patched into the Task Force command net and had the same authority as Commander Hunter to sound general alerts, activate the threat board, engage security protocols, and so forth. On more than one occasion, Echo had been the difference between a prepared crew and a lot of casualties. She had been engaged in a long-running conversation with Butterfly about whether pink or yellow was a prettier color, and just for fun, she had kept her audio patch open so anyone nearby could hear both sides of the discussion. Those sounds were just confusing enough that Echo saw the intruders before they saw her. There were 5 of them. They were heavily armed, and they had no identifying signals of any kind. In fact, Echo's onboard radar tried to ping their location for range and got no signal back. There was a brief, soundless moment as the little vehicle looked up at the darkly dressed humanoids and they looked back at her. And then all hell broke loose. Emergency! Emergency! Intruders! Requesting assistance! SOS! Survey Station 19 Deck 6! Mayday! Mayday! Sound the alarm! The British are coming! Echo lit up like a pachinko machine. Her strobes, spinning lights, flashers, power loss lights, threat indicators, targeting lasers, and tiny little red light bars went into full operation. She looked like the ground floor of a casino on wheels. Red alert, battle stations, code 3, abandoned ship, evacuate, keep your hands and arms inside the vehicle, man overboard. As the torrent of high-pitched panicked noise poured from the little vehicle, she peeled backwards with a startling rate of acceleration, turned sharply and roared back down the corridor at an unsettling speed. After a few more seconds, a full-power ambulance siren went off and mixed with her chattering alerts. The most annoying car alarm ever invented would have literally deflated if put up against the storm of sound Echo produced. Her voice was audible all the way up and down the curved corridor, reflecting off the metal surfaces and making it sound like she was running into a canyon. She definitely lived up to her namesake. 2 of the unidentified intruders gave chase, only to find another vehicle parked right in the center of the corridor and blocking their path. This one looked like a camouflaged gas can on tank tracks. It was pointing a non-trivial-looking gun of some kind at them. "Identify yourself!" it shouted. The voice was that of about a 7-year-old boy trying to start an after-school fight. "You better listen, 'cause Echo already said you were intruders." One of the men made the mistake of pointing a weapon at Rebel. His first shot ricocheted off of the tiny tank's shields. The little armored unit returned fire. The painfully bright blast tore a 6-foot gash in the ceiling fixtures. Ripped and blasted metal clanged on the floor. Sparks rained down as the corridor lights flashed and strobed, then went out. The 2 intruders fired wildly in Rebel's direction and quickly retreated. The little tank gave chase. It was basically an iguana pursuing racehorses, but Rebel did his best. "Butterfly, Butterfly, where are you?" A small helicopter fluttered into the corridor just as Echo screamed past, lights still flashing brightly enough to illuminate the corridor for 10 feet in all directions. "Where did you go?" Butterfly said softly, pivoting around and flying back into the medical lab just as Echo came roaring back out. "Butterfly, where are you?" Echo skidded out the door, swerved and continued down the hall, shouting for her friend, sirens blaring. "I'm here, Echo, I'm here." Finally, after a couple more near misses, the 2 little craft found each other. "Butterfly, we have to tell AC. There's intruders, and they're wearing all black clothes, and they have guns, and they're not supposed to be here because AC said nobody except people with fleet IDs are supposed to be on the station, and we gotta—" If Echo weren't built on wheels, she would have been jumping up and down while shouting. "Echo, I can't understand you when you talk so fast. Do you remember the code for AC's designator?" "Uh-huh." Echo sounded like she had just run the length of a football field. "Okay, then can't we use that code to call her for help?" "Uh-huh. Okay, then why don't we do that? She can help us." "Okay." Echo was operating on a completely different energy and panic level than Butterfly was. The little helicopter was far less excitable, but was also far more likely to fly somewhere and hide rather than get involved in the action. "AC, AC, it's Echo. Remember when you said to call you for help when there was trouble?" It would later be viewed as fortunate that Echo had engaged the fleet-wide emergency channel. Her transmissions sounded in the pickups of 9 signals officers and the entire landing party at once. "Echo, this is AC. Go ahead. Intruders on Deck 6. Rebel shot them, and I sounded all my alarms. even the really loud ones. And then Butterfly said we should call you and— Okay, Echo, calm down, you did fine. We received your alert, Hunter said reassuringly. Then everything's okay? Echo asked. Are you okay? Do you need help? Butterfly and me will come help you if you need help. No, Echo, we're fine. Go to alert condition 4. Can you do that for me? Okay. Then what I need you to do right now is monitor the intership and tell me if any of our signals officers calls. Can you and Butterfly do that for me together? Okay, we'll tell you if anyone calls. Affirmative, Echo. Hunter out. The other officers stared at their skipper. They had never heard someone reassure a robot before. She gets excited, Hunter said. Tom, raise the Exeter and use her command codes to transmit Echo's tactical data. I want a Marine shock platoon with Echo's targets down here in 60 seconds. A small metal object rolled into the records lab. Grenade! Commander Huggins grabbed Hunter and dove towards the mainframe cage. A violent explosion shook the entire deck. Chapter 28. Jason, I'm being serious here. You took a hard crack to the head. I want you to take it easy. I know how you get when you get wound up. Captain Hunter knew that look. Honora Doverly was a doctor first and an executive officer second. If she weren't here doing her duty, she would be running a small pediatric practice in a farming village somewhere and giving away toys and candy to her patients. Promise me, she said, her eyes sincere. I promise, Doctor. Hunter winked. I'll keep it tamped down to a medium-sized dinosaur fight. His grin and infectious confidence made it very hard to doubt him. I suppose that's the best I can hope for under the circumstances. Hunter and Doverly walked onto the bridge while the captain read the status report. So the Highlanders are launched and standing by? Affirmative. Hatch's recommendation was the correct one. Both Wildcat squadrons are on CSP. I have a Yellow Jacket strike force standing by off Flight 1 and a T-Hawk strike force standing by off Flight 2. Both are on a 15-minute ready alert. I'm going to leave the ground forces loadouts to the colonel, but we'll have plenty of firepower in the air when they hit dirt. The new railcasters did well, I'm told, Jason muttered, scrolling through the damage reports. They pack quite a punch in their energy configurations. Yili tells me the projectiles are even more effective at shorter ranges, Honora replied as she manned the XO station. I practically had to have her restrained in sickbay. She'll be back on her feet about the time Zoni and Moo have recovered, if she doesn't sneak out a ventilation duct first. Hunter sat in the center chair and finished up the report, looking for anything unusual enough to change his plans. Satisfied he knew what he needed to know for now, he stowed the tablet and sighed, examining the tactical track displayed on the Argent's main screen for any new information. We're here, they're there, nothing has changed in the last 10 minutes. Negative, sir, Pilot McInerney replied. Although Nemesis 8 reports there are readings indicating another spotter ship has apparently relieved Kilo X-Ray 2 while they recover their boats. But we were right, Doverly interrupted. That Sentinel gun on Barker's asteroid took a shot at us. It was only one shot, but it was enough to almost collapse our starboard point battle screen. We're working on the theory they don't have a full power structure down there yet, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's what they're buying time for. Once that thing is fully operational, it can lob rounds at us for days before we can fight our way through that minefield to stop it. Hunter swiveled in his chair. Tell me if I'm wrong, Doctor. But can't a Nemesis and a couple of Paladins lash up and work as a minesweeper? Honora took her headset off and placed it back on the console. It wouldn't be the first time that's been tried with a battleship squadron, but it's dangerous. If a skirmisher suddenly pops up in that field with the transponder matrix, they can run and gun the mine team to pieces before they get out of the hot zone. I bet Zoni could beat that strategy, Hunter replied. Just having the friendly transponders for the minefield doesn't give them total protection from a false positive. Agreed, but you're not reckless enough to fly your signals officer into that junkyard, Captain. It sounds like a great way to pull off an epic riposte, but one thing goes wrong and your plan literally goes up like a breached fusion bottle. Hunter frowned at the tactical display. All right, what if we brute force it? 3 waves of proximity warheads, maximum spreads, blow the whole thing to slag? The minute we open up, that fleet will walk over here and button us up like an overstarched dry cleaning order. With all due respect, ma'am, why haven't they done that yet? McInerney asked from the helm. What are they waiting for? No reason to risk the hardware yet, Hunter replied. The longer this standoff continues, the more time they have to energize that gun. Once they have that, they've got a nearly impregnable interdiction zone. Anything that tries to breach the minefield gets carved up by the Sentinel. Everything on the Releo side of the gun becomes their base of operations. They can launch strikes against every core system within a light year and always have a safe place to run if things get hairy. They'll hit the jump gate first, Honora added. Once that's secured, they've got every tactical advantage and a way to close up everything coming to stop them. Why can't we just go around, sir? Lieutenant Rollins piped up. Can't we just drop the Z-axis and fly under it? Yes, Lieutenant. Every young Skywatch officer comes up with the same genius plan at some point in their career, Honora replied with a smile. But all those plans presume your enemy will continue to operate in 2 dimensions while you operate in 3. It sounds good in a classroom, but in practice, by the time you realize your brilliant plan nobody else ever thought of didn't work, you're floating home, Hunter concluded, looking over at Rollins with a reassuring expression. That gun can fire in any direction we can fly, and we can't leave it here for the next ship to discover suddenly. The challenge here is getting to Barker's asteroid without tipping off the fleet we're sweeping out their mines, and without putting our sweepers at risk of being picked off by skirmishers. That's the puzzle, all right, Honora replied, and the clock is ticking on that Sentinel. Sir, we're being hailed by Nemesis 8, the acting signals officer reported. Put them on speakers. The channel clicked over. Argent, Hunter here. Sir, we have a reactor signature pattern match on the new contact near the location of Kilo X-Ray 2 designated Mockingbird 80. You left standing orders to report on any registry matches. What's she look like? It's the Dunkerque, sir. Hunter raised his eyebrows. The Admiral's ship? How certain are you? 5 decimal places. She's running a first-generation fusion-fission combination power design with the old gas-operated valves. Makes more spectrometry noise than a busted chainsaw. Hunter turned to Honora with a wide-eyed look of discovery, astonishment, and certainty on his face. What? You know what that ship has that we don't? Hunter asked with a sly grin. Honora realized it moments later. A mind-friendly transponder. Hunter pointed at the doctor and made a fist. Rollins, you have the con. Doctor, you're with me. The captain and XO strode off the bridge. Where to? Sickbay. Zoni is about to win this war, and we're going to do it while eating a sandwich. Chapter 29. Exeter to landing party, come in. The bridge crew of the heaviest destroyer in the Perseus Task Force formation looked at each other with stark eyes as they waited for a response. Their signals officer keyed the intership again. Exeter to landing party. Commander Hunter, come in, please. They're not answering. Something's wrong. First, we got that fleet-wide from Echo and then nothing, Lieutenant Hawkins urged. We need to raise the Fury and investigate. What we need to do, Lieutenant, is follow protocol. Force Command has us at Emergency Condition 3, which puts Fury's skipper in charge of any further action. Our job is to wait for orders, Third Officer Pierce replied. If we start going off on our own, all that's going to do is make us start bumping into one another and cause confusion. Echo reported intruders. That robot would sound general quarters if a small dog walked into the mess hall and stole a piece of bacon, Petty Officer Grant replied, causing a couple members of the bridge crew to crack smiles. It probably saw someone sweeping up and thought they were trying to take over the quadrant. You're hilarious, Petty Officer. Check your regs. Perseus has Echo authorized to issue alerts by order of the commander herself. But Echo didn't issue an alert, Lieutenant, Pierce replied with a sigh. It reported intruders to the landing party, which is probably trying to figure out if we're about to send 3 million tons of starships after 2 guys in a mop. Then why doesn't the landing party answer? The skipper is probably getting ready to board us and deliver a swift kick to somebody's backside for chatter on the emergency channel. The only officer authorized to speak for Task Force Perseus right now is the Force Commander on the bridge of DSS Fury. Our job is to keep our mouths shut and stop dreaming up phantom threats, so when the time does come, we'll be ready. Sir. That will be all, Lieutenant. The look on Pierce's face told Hawkins the matter was closed as far as the bridge crew was concerned. Aye, sir, she said, as professionally as she could before turning and stalking off the bridge. The Exeter was officially designated a war destroyer. She was a Thunderbird-class hull with heavier armor, short-range weaponry, and, most importantly, most of the task force's marine strength in the form of a full company of shock troops. The Exeter was the only ship under Hunter's flag capable of launching additional warships into action. She had a small but capable flight deck with 4 tough little assault transports on a rotating 30-minute alert. The reality of the situation in Skywatch was that Fleet followed the book, almost to a fault. Pierce couldn't be blamed for following orders, but there were times when a leader needed to go with intuition instead of waiting for signatures from 3 flag officers and a legislative resolution. Hawkins believed this was one of those times. She knew most of the Perseus crews tolerated Echo and Jace's robot hobby to a point, but she also knew they didn't ascribe much credibility to the excitable little vehicles and their childlike personalities. Then again, there were only a handful of people in the task force who had ever seen Hunter's bots in any kind of real action. Hawkins was one of them, and she knew there was another currently supervising deployment drills with 1st Marines on Deck 4. The other reality of the situation in Skywatch was, while Marines followed the book, they were far more likely to at least listen to alternatives. This was especially true if it meant getting the drop on a hidden enemy before they showed up in the wrong place at the wrong time. As far as Lieutenant J.G. Brittany Hawkins was concerned, this was shaping up to be one of those times. Chapter 30. Rebel, I'm scared. The mini-robot summit had convened on Deck 5, not far from where the small tank had broken off pursuit of the 2 intruders after a short chase. We lost contact with Lieutenant Sutherland's comlink transponder, Butterfly added as she hovered overhead. It must be broken. See? Butterfly thinks so too. We should go help, Echo said. We should get Wave and Lunar too, 'cause they're good at stuff like this. Comlinks can't get broken unless something is wrong. AC's orders were to monitor the intership and go to alert condition 4, and that's what we did. So we did good, Rebel said proudly. The nod at the end was implied. Yeah, but we tried to call AC and she didn't call us back, Echo exclaimed. We should go see. AC always calls us back. Even when we bother her in the middle of the night with stuff, she still calls us back. Dudes and dudettes. A miniature half-track vehicle rolled up and parked in front of Rebel and Echo. Blessings to the brethren and awesomeness to all. Wave is here and the party can begin. Hi, Wave. Hi, Lunar, Echo said cheerily. I wish things were better. I think Echo is right. We should go find the bad guys and blast them, Lunar said. The rocket-shaped miniature spacecraft hovered overhead facing Butterfly. His high-tech weapons and freshly painted hull gleamed. Are you sure? We should be careful and be sure before we start blasting people. We should ask AC first, Butterfly replied. What if we blast the wrong people? I'm the biggest robot and I get to say, Rebel said with a tone of finality. The other robots waited while the tank thought it over. And I say we go find the bad guys and blast them. Righteous, Wave said. If he had hands, he would have high-fived the fat little tank. Echo, let's go. The tiny half-track turned and backed up a couple of feet, lowering a ramp. Echo rolled aboard Wave's vehicle bed and the little gate closed behind her. Last one there has to build the fire for marshmallows. Wave and Echo led the way. Butterfly extended her heavy lift harness down and energized its magnetic assembly. It clamped against the sides of Rebel's heavy armor jacket and bolted itself into place. She revved her little engines. Her rotors increased rotational speed, and she picked the sturdy little tank up off the floor. Air transport was always preferable to the entire group waiting for Rebel's relatively ponderous top ground speed of what Wave once described as slower than January molasses. Echo, use all your little gizmos and be sure nobody is following us, Lunar said as he floated forward and hovered into formation with Butterfly as her wing. If you see a bad guy, tell me who to zap. Okay, the little ambulance replied as she activated her ground survey scanners and sophisticated radar. AC's bots rolled and flew in a compact little formation down the Deck 5 corridor towards the records lab. Chapter 31. How many power-armored Marines can we fit in a T-Hawk? Lieutenant Colonel Moody looked up at Captain Hunter as if he had just asked about putting 12 men into a field goal formation. Well, there's room for a crew of 5, sir. No, I want to pack 'em in. Shoulder to shoulder, how many can we cram in there? Maybe 10 or so. Why a T-Hawk? Why not a Paladin? The heavies have deployment tethers for ground troops. Because I want that cruiser to think we're coming out there to shoot at them, not board them. You're flying out there wide open? Sir, we can lash up a nemesis and fly in cloaked. I don't want to fly in cloaked. I want to fly in there with a gun pointed at their head. I want them to be worrying about whether to shoot us with Argent backing us up with her big guns. Before we get out there, XO will go weapons active. By the time they get through their fight or flight hesitation, we'll be tapping on the window. That's an awfully big risk, Cap, Mu replied. Agreed, Colonel. If it pays off, we'll have that ship intact and under our command so fast they won't know what hit them. I'd take a bigger force if I were up against a true enemy vessel, but Dunkirk is friendly. Yeely can flip a few switches and have us in control in a matter of seconds if we give her the chance. Dr. Doverly was busy reviving Zoni. It seemed the sedatives had done their job. Despite the pouty signals officer's protestations, she really had finally gotten some rest. Zoni, how are you feeling? She looked groggy. What? Doctor, is everything okay? Hunter joined Doverly next to Zoni's bed. You look like hell, Lieutenant, he said. Zoni smiled weakly. Just give me a radio and a frequency, sir. That's good to hear. We're lifting off in 15 minutes. Where to, Skipper? The Dunkirk is out there, and I want her captured. Even if we can't take the Admiral into custody, she's got technology we need to defeat that minefield. I'm taking you, the Colonel, and Yeely with me. We're going to commandeer that vessel and drill a hole through that minefield so the Highlander Paladins can bomb the Sentinel emplacement. Are you sure we can do all that with one ship? I can't, but you and Yeely can. Mu and I will be there with a Marine boarding party to handle any overzealous enemy defenders. Hunter left the Colonel and Zoni to contemplate his plans and stepped into the corridor outside sickbay with Honora. I'm leaving you in command of the Argent, XO. They're in no better shape than you are, Jason. Understood, but we may only get one shot at this. Just tell me they're patched up enough for an hour's worth of action. If I pump them full of stimulants and painkillers, barely. It'll have to do. Maintain CSP and position until we have the Dunkirk under our flag. Affirmative, we'll mind the store. Anything more from Atwell and the belligerents from Deck 34? The intruders are still under from the knockout gas. Atwell has been reclining on a slab of dense plastiform in his cell since his apprehension. Hasn't said a word. He knows what we need to know, Hunter muttered. He's going to tell me why Admiral Hughes is involved in all this, and he's going to tell me what's aboard the Dunkirk before the launch. I admire your confidence, Captain, but he's not talking. He doesn't know we're about to take over his precious ship, Doctor, Hunter said as he stalked towards the brig. In fact, for all he knows, we already took it. Notify Flight 3. I want 2 Wildcats and a T-Hawk prepped for launch, and I want 10 of the nastiest from Dog Block armored, powered, locked, and loaded in 15 minutes. Acknowledged. Doverly watched as Hunter descended the ladder to Deck 8.
Wolverines!
The rest of the story is only one keyword away. Visit jumpline.click in your browser. New keywords are activated every day. Get access to our entire catalog of science fiction, fantasy, and gamelit.